See, this is my life. It always will be. There's nothing else. Just us. And the cameras. And those wonderful people out there in the dark.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Out There in the Dark. My name is Tom Alexander, and as always with me is Mr. Azed Majeed. Hi, Azed.
Sorry, what?
Folks, I had to wake him up.
Oh, yeah, I'm tired today.
Yeah. It took a while.
I started smoking weed around 12 today.
Okay, you just finished.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not finished for the day.
It's going to be a great episode, folks.
I'm like the Michael Caine character in Children of Men now. That's my new lifestyle.
All right, pull my finger. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Strawberry cough.
Today we've got a really exciting and pretty intense episode. We're going to take a really deep dive into one of the great filmmakers of cinema history. That would be Jonathan Demme.
Yeah. Jonathan Demme is great. And sort of had a long, lengthy career. Like he only went up as he went on.
Very
forward.
Varied. Very dynamic, a lot of diverse types of films.
Yeah, we were talking earlier that I think we could kind of divide his career into like three sort of like periods almost, or maybe oversimplifying it, but he did start out kind of very B-film. He's from the Roger Corman school, and we did an episode all about Roger Corman a while back, so you can go check that out if you want. If you've never heard that episode as a new viewer.
It's a great one.
Yeah, it's a great one. So he started with that kind of B-film Roger Corman school, made these kind of like like very low budget kind of soft-core porn almost.
Yeah.
Women in women in prison films. He made a few of those, right?
The most famous being Caged Heat.
Yes,
I think, which was
Heat.
his first directorial feature.
Yeah, I think so.
Which I recently saw.
Yeah. Which is, as far as women in prison films goes.
It's good. It's good for that genre.
Yeah.
But make no mistake, as feminist and as humanist as Jonathan Demme is as a filmmaker, it is 100% sexploitation. Women in prison.
It is. It serves a purpose.
There's lots of unnecessary nudity and just really salacious and
what is unnecessary
sleazy
nudity though? Is there ever anything that's unnecessary nudity?
Yeah, especially you. And but you know what?
Thanks. It's
all right.
Helpful.
Moving on.
Yeah.
Caged Heat is smart. Like it's fun. It zips along.
You can
it's
see already there's something.
There's
there.
talent.
Yeah. And then he goes in. He's like a real pioneer of this kind of. I would say, I don't know whether anybody has officially called it anything, but like in music they call it like post-punk, which is, like I guess you could include bands like Talking Heads, Television, those kind of groups, right? Anyway, it doesn't matter about the music, but I'm just saying that there's a kind of ethos, a kind of lefty ethos, a kind of counterculture, anti-racist, anti-authoritarian style to Jonathan Demme's indie work, where like we're talking about movies like this first one was called Citizen Band, which I haven't seen, so I can't really speak on it, but I've heard it's pretty good. The next one, which is one of my all-time favorites of his, is Melvin and Howard.
Yeah.
Which is all about, which was based on a true story, which was in the headlines at the time because Howard Hughes had just died. So it's about Howard Hughes. He had this. There were a number of wills that were being kind of passed around, and one of them landed in this sort of like this nobody's gas station out in the middle of nowhere, and it bequeathed like millions and millions of dollars to him, right? And this was this guy that Melvin, who's the star of the movie, who is just this kind of like bumpkin, this kind of like really nice guy, but really silly, he's always writing weird songs and stuff, and he bumps into Howard Hughes in the middle of the desert because Howard Hughes was nuts and he would ride around in the desert as an old man on a motorcycle, and he wipes out, and Melvin picks him up in the middle of the night and takes him and doesn't know he's Howard Hughes, right? And just thinks he's an old man. So that movie is, I think, the first time he gets on the map, because that movie gets nominated for a number of awards.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
I mean, and it also, I think, sets the blueprint for his themes and style to come.
It's brilliant, that
it's
movie.
Beautiful. We talked about it a little bit when we did an episode about character actors, because we talked about Mary Steenburgen.
Right.
And Mary Steenburgen is like the light of this film.
She's amazing.
She plays Paul Le Mat's on again, off again wife, who's constantly leaving him and then going back to him.
Yeah. Very sweet, ditzy, but really lovable.
Super charming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that scene where she's stripping, and then she just goes, "Hey, Melvin."
Very innocent.
Innocent
character.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the kind of movie that it goes along. Beautiful characters, great. Jason Robards is Howard Hughes. Paul Le Mat is Melvin.
Well, this is the thing. This is another thing. So you're right. I 100% agree with you. This movie sets the template for even his bigger blockbuster movies, because there are certain things he does in this movie that he repeats constantly. Number one is he uses a lot of close-ups, right? He likes to use... he brings this to craziness in Silence of the Lambs, which gets copied, by everybody, right? Looking directly into the camera, right? But he's always focused on the characters, right? In a way that is, he always wants. His whole thing is he wants to get inside, but not in a sort of Freudian psychological way. He just wants to watch and get to know people. These kind of marginal characters, these kind of strange hybrid characters who are both, either in the wrong time or the wrong place, or they don't quite fit in their slot, right?
Yeah, one of the things I think Demme does extremely well that other filmmakers struggle with is he's able to take a film with multiple characters, whether it's like, the three main characters of Melvin and Howard, or the vast number of characters in films like Rachel Getting Married, and you see the point of view of each character very clearly. So he's very good at balancing multiple points of view in any film, and then balancing those out, and then we can see the dynamic between those people, and that's where kind of the magic happens.
I think you're right. Yeah, I totally agree.
And I think that's incredibly skillful. And as we talked about earlier, one of Demme's biggest fans was Paul Thomas Anderson.
Yeah.
Who dedicated Phantom Thread to him.
Yeah.
And
you can see it in his work, like Boogie Nights and even Magnolia to a certain extent, because the one thing, this is also something like that is very, very integral to Jonathan Demme's work all throughout, is that he's very democratic with the way he shoots scenes, the way he shoots people, right? There are very few extras in a Jonathan Demme movie that don't have some kind of role to play.
They're very memorable because they're played by actors who look a certain way. Like, think about Silence of the Lambs and Charles Napier as that, and that throwaway line. Roger Corman is the director of the FBI.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't it's amazing. He's got one scene.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and even the girl, like singing American Girl before she gets abducted. You don't forget these people, right? And it's all the way he kind of focuses his camera on people in either groups, in a community setting, very celebratory, or between people. Like, he's interested in the relationships between the individual and the collective, and the individual and the other, right? And he was a very fascinating guy that way, because his interest was genuine. He was very connected to the country of Haiti, for example, and he was a very musical guy. And like, if you know one thing about his work, it's like his taste in music is amazing, right? Yeah. And he used a lot of like great music in his movies, and somehow he got, I don't know what the full story there is, but he got connected to Haiti, and he made at least 3, I think, documentaries about Haiti. Not very big, famous movies at all, right? I guess the most famous one is called The Agronomist, which, anyway, we'll get into that later. But the point is, he was fighting for Haiti's democratic rights. Like, he was putting time in. He learned Creole. right? He was very interested in the black community as well in America in the same way. So he reminded me a bit of John Sayles that way, or
Right.
other kind of directors from that period of time.
That's a good point.
Who brought in a kind of like perspective on race, that was very balanced, and not like, not like that weird, like, I'm white, I don't know how to talk about, it's like,
Yeah.
and I'll talk more about that because he famously made the Oprah Winfrey movie Beloved, which was the remake of was the adaptation of the Toni Morrison, which we'll talk about this when we get to it, but it's like was a huge catastrophe, right? And there was a lot of groups who said, why is this white man, adapting this? But Toni Morrison loved it,
Right.
right? So he's a controversial director in that way, right? Because his interests as a white man were actually more always about, even his concept of the outsider in his movies is always kind of related to how he sees an unjust majority sort of excluding people rather than, giving them a hand.
Yeah,
right?
and I'll talk about that a bit later too when we discuss The Silence of the Lambs, because
Right.
that's certainly a big part of that film.
That is. Okay. So what do you want to do? You want to just go through, do you want to go through a little biography of him first? Like I can just go through like a 2-minute
sure.
thing. Okay. So this is a guy who also in a way reminds me of Roger Corman. He was a very straight-laced looking guy, right? Just a very kind of like affable, nice guy. Looked like a teacher or something, right? He was born in Florida, and he actually was not one of those people who like loved movies growing up and all that kind of stuff. He was like actually really into animals, and he wanted to be a vet.
Well, good thing he didn't.
Yeah, but I always like to see whether those things have any play in his movies, right? But I guess the humanism, right? Like he loves animals, right?
Yeah.
So, and then he dropped out of college. He became a film critic, which is a thing that a lot of people did back then, for like smaller like regional publications and stuff, and then moved into public relations. Right.
He did PR for Roger Corman, didn't he?
Yeah, he did, and he worked as a movie publicist, I think in New York eventually, and then London, for major distribution companies. So basically, in your neck of the woods, right?
Right.
He thought he was just going to stay behind the scenes for the rest of his life, right? And then he basically encountered Roger Corman. Corman saw potential in him because he was such a big movie buff, right? By that point. And then he hired him for his New World Pictures. So this is like the second iteration of Roger Corman directors, in the 70s, because in the 60s, 50s and 60s, he has the original slew. And in this group, he has Jonathan Demme and Peter Bogdanovich and Alan Arkush and all those guys, right?
Right.
And then by the time he 70s and 80s breaks, he's like already quite big. Because of Melvin and Howard, then he did Married to the Mob and Something Wild, and that's really the first part of his career, I would say. I call it the screwball era because it's very influenced by, he's very influenced by a lot of older filmmakers, which we can talk about as well. And then after that, so he goes on after that period, Something Wild being kind of the last sort of screwball-y type thing he does. He does Silence of the Lambs. Okay, and that sort of inaugurates his...
That's his high point.
His high point. It's the apotheosis of his style and his work as a filmmaker. It's completely different from what you've expected from him, but...
He'd never made a horror film before.
No.
And even with Roger Corman, it was exploitation.
Yeah.
Women in prison, biker gangs.
Yeah.
And it was just like every element came together. And what was crazy about the film was that not only was it the only horror film to win the Oscar for Best Picture,
right.
It was one of only 3 films in cinema history to win all 5 major Academy Awards.
Right. It was a phenomenon.
It was a phenomenon.
Yeah.
I remember when I saw it in the theater, when it came out, and I was terrified. I was like,
Yeah.
I was hypnotized. I remember at the end when Jodie Foster goes into the basement and he shuts the lights off, and you
Yeah.
got the
That
night
whole
vision.
like infrared scene. Yeah.
And I was just shaking.
Yeah. Yeah.
was
No,
like, I mean, I was 20 years old, I guess, when I saw it.
It was a like if people who weren't around or old enough to see it back then, I guess this movie came out in
91.
91, yeah.
And even like 2 years ago, I took my son to see it in the theater on a 35 millimeter print.
Nice.
And he was blown away.
Wow.
He had already seen it, but...
Oh, stop making me jealous. I didn't get to get... well, that's really cool. That's great.
Yeah.
No, it's a great movie. I saw it again recently too. I showed it to Ishmael. I showed it to my son, and because he had never seen it, and I hadn't seen it for a long time too. And it's a great movie. It's just a great movie. It's like atmospherically amazing, right?
Yeah.
And it's very. It's just, I don't know, everything. It's,
I
such a cliche now. It's impossible to talk about it in any kind of real, like, objective way.
I mean, I could do a whole episode about the Silence of the Lambs.
Okay,
and I would say, just humor me for a moment. I would say it's, of all of Demme's films, it's probably the one that has the strongest cultural legacy. I mean, without Silence, there would be no Twin Peaks.
David Lynch, 100% agree.
David Lynch said it was he loved the film, and it greatly influenced the style.
The same.
Even the font is identical, and the entire, David Fincher's TV show, Mindhunter, is directly based on the character, Scott Glenn character, in the film, who's based on John Douglas, who started the behavioral sciences unit at the FBI. So and it's still quoted all the time. It still plays. I mean, the screening I saw was sold out.
It's hugely influential movie on so many things. But
and there was a controversy certainly at the time around trans representation, because a lot of groups were very up in arms about, once again, we have the villain of the film is LGBT, and Demme was not really cognizant that was going to be an issue, and I think as we look back on it, for example, my son is trans, and when after I showed him the film for the first time at home, I asked him, how do you feel about trans representation? And he said, well, it's fine, because at one point Hannibal Lecter makes it clear that Buffalo Bill is not trans, and that he's simply somebody who has lost his identity completely.
Yeah.
And I think that was a really good point. So
I think that they kind of, interestingly, it's Hannibal Lecter who has a kind of more sensitive read on the murderer, right? Because he's so precise, right? And knows that this is not the thing. Yeah, I think that's, I mean, obviously that's up to trans people to determine if they find it okay or not okay. It's going to be different for different people, obviously.
Course.
I think that, what I would say is this is the movie that for me really brings out a formal element of Demme's, which is that this is one of the few movies, and now it's ubiquitous, right? But where you see very close-ups, very extreme close-ups on people's
very
faces.
Intense.
For a long period of time, giving full-on monologues, right? To the camera, looking right into the camera, but of course it's assumed that they're looking into like, she looks like Clarice is looking at Hannibal.
Yeah, well, they're talking through the bars.
But they're separate shots, and really they're looking right at you, right? And that's a very bold choice, I think, and it reminds me a lot of oddly like Ozu. Ozu does that same thing with dialogue, where it's like direct, like looking right into the camera, and then just the flip, right?
Yeah.
And
there's no lap shots. It's always like,
there's no dirty shots, as they say, right? There's no over the shoulders. There's no nothing like that. There's no, and I find that that's a rigorous kind of style that he employs, even in something like Stop Making Sense, right? If there are other people in the frame, he includes them, right? But he doesn't make a star out of somebody. What he's doing in Silence of the Lambs is he's getting you into that weird liminal space where it exists so in this intimate pocket, right, between you and the killer, right? And thereby, that's what gives it such a creepy feeling.
It's as cliche as it is. It's a very effective film. It's very creepy. And I think you're right. I think Demme does do a lot of interesting things cinematically with that film. For example, toward the end, he does a little fake out where we think the FBI are closing in on the house. Right. The guy presses the doorbell, and then you can hear the doorbell in the basement, blah, blah, blah. And then, boom, we find out that the FBI are at the wrong place,
house,
and Clarice is in danger. And I'd never seen that before. I'd never seen that device in a film where they're taking two separate scenes and making you think it's the same scene. I thought that was great.
There's some real innovative filmmaking. And that's it.
And how the climax is all in this black and white night vision thing.
Yeah, which was, I think it was kind of the first time anybody had ever seen something that realistic, like that looked like actual infrared. I remember reading something about that it was the first time, and it was so scary because of that, right?
Yeah. No, it's a great film.
Yeah. So I think what we're getting at is that you can kind of look at after Silence of the Lambs, of course, he becomes a different kind of filmmaker, right? And this is an interesting thing about his career because it gets so big, right? And interestingly enough, I think his next movie is Philadelphia, right?
That's right.
And I think what you were talking about earlier, which was that there was a lot of people that were hurt by the trans portrayal in Silence of the Lambs, and because Demme was the kind of person he was, it bothered him.
Yeah.
Right. Even if he could make a rational response and say, well, that wasn't my intent. Whatever, he could have done that, but he purposefully wanted to make Philadelphia as a response to the LGBTQ society, like for the people who were kind of like, just like we're not happy, and it was not everyone. It was just a contingent, but that's the kind of filmmaker he was, and that reminded me a lot of John Ford, because John Ford,
it's Cheyenne Autumn.
Yeah, with Cheyenne Autumn, exactly. So if anybody doesn't know that story, it's like John Ford was, of course, known for all the the westerns where you see all the engines and all that kind of stuff. It's very, very problematic, borderline, or straight out racist portrayals of Native people in America. But then, because he'd gotten so much flack for that, and he always sort of fought back, but he made a film called Cheyenne Autumn, which was like, from the Native perspective, right?
It was like Griffith and Intolerance.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I don't want to get.
We're not going to talk about that.
Don't want to go into all that, but it's true. It is like Griffith too, right? And so, but I think that Demme is much more sensitive, obviously, to that kind of thing. And then he makes Philadelphia, which is again a huge blockbuster, right? Film. Yeah. Silence of the Lambs, one of the biggest films probably of all time. And Philadelphia was huge too. Got nominated for a number of.
Tom Hanks won the Oscar for Best Actor.
Right. So then Demme becomes known as an actor's director at this point.
Right. Which he always was. He always, right from.
He was always
Steenburgen winning the Oscar.
Even in his early films, he was able to get great performances. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so this is his Hollywood era, right, where he becomes this kind of lead kind of director in of these handsomely mounted very big budget films, right, like Philadelphia. After Philadelphia, he does
I think he does Beloved.
So, and this is where his career kind of comes to an end, sort of, right? I mean,
takes a little hiccup.
Takes a hiccup. And so let's talk about Beloved a little bit. I've seen Beloved now twice. I saw it when it first was on TV, not in the theater. I saw it when it was first on TV. So that must have been 20 years ago.
Yeah, I saw it in the theater once. I don't remember. I remember liking it quite a bit, but I can't really speak to it like you can. So I'll let you.
Well, I mean, what I would say is that so I don't want to go. I know a lot of people probably haven't seen it. So. Because the movie now has such a bad reputation, it reminds me of like Heaven's Gate, right? Heaven's Gate, 70s, movie, Michael Cimino, famously just biggest bomb of all time.
Bankrupted United Artists.
Yeah, and it's actually an excellent movie. So that you know, when you look at the politics around how criticism gets actually doled out, how much of this stuff is bought and sold, and what the politics behind it are, this is why a movie like Beloved, I don't think, did well, right? Mm-hmm. But let's talk about Beloved. Beloved is based on the novel Beloved by Toni Morrison, which was already kind of like a big book, right, at that time.
Oh, yeah.
And it's kind of known to be a very poetic, stream of consciousness, somewhat spooky style of writing, right? That's Toni Morrison, right? And people thought, well, this is not a filmable book, but of course, Oprah at the time being Oprah, right? And, you know, always been somebody who was, you know, big on books, I guess, you know. She loved it, and so she optioned it. And she was looking for directors, and nobody wanted to touch this book, right? And I think it was a combination of the difficulty of translating this kind of material, but at the same time, you know, it deals with some very, very dark chapters in American history. So the story, basically, just in a very nutshell way, is Oprah is this you know, the slave, but it's in the Reconstruction era, right? It takes place just after slavery ends. And she was a slave, and she has a couple of children. She has one daughter, and a couple of sons, and her house, so she's basically no man in there, right? And the whole story comes out throughout the movie, right? Like what happened to her. But you notice right away there's a spirit in her house, right? And Demme uses these kind of very almost cliched style, like haunted house moves.
Right.
Because like Danny Glover plays this slave that she was on the same plantation with, and he comes back after now and comes to her, and they basically she invites him to come in to her house. As soon as he goes in, for example, the whole house, like he starts walking in the front hallway, it turns all red, right? Like bright red. And he sort of stops and he goes, "What's going on? What's happening in your house?" Right? And then he starts seeing some flashes of these gruesome, like bloody murder scenes and, you know, children, and, you know, just these flashes. And so they have this ghost in their house. And what you find out is that, I don't want to do spoiler in case anybody wants to watch it, but okay, it's a 25-year-old movie, so forget it.
Go for it.
Basically, it's with Oprah, when she was, her character, Sefi, when she was owned by school teacher, was their master, on the previous place where her and Danny Glover were together. She had been raped and, you know, beaten by very cruel masters, and when her when they were coming to take her children, she took them and killed them instead, right?
Right.
She only succeeded in killing her daughter. She tried to kill her sons, but they lived. Okay?
Wow.
And she said basically, I would rather that's how she wanted, in her mind, she kept them safe from being taken and raped and, you know. But so at this point in the film, at the beginning, this is already like in the past, right? So this is also, this ghost is like a kind of reincarnation of the dead spirit of her baby. And then when Danny Glover kind of fights the spirit off, you know, he yells at it, you know, of course the male figure comes in, and then, you know, and then this ghost, the spirit disappears, and they think, oh, it's gone. But then out of the water, out of the lake, comes this fully grown Thandie Newton.
Wow.
But she's like a baby, right? And she's wearing this like black Victorian lace dress, and she's like, just like, you know, she's like all like strange the way she moves and stuff. And she winds up at her house, and then Sefi takes her in, and blah 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 blah. She thinks she gets convinced that this is the reincarnate. Her baby's come back to her. So this beloved is the name of the of this figure, right? And she's so greedy for the mother's attention all the time that she pushes, like she clearly, like she'll do anything to make sure everybody, so she's dangerous, right?
Right.
Anyway, the story goes on and on. It's very, very dark, and but it also has a very beautiful spiritual component to it. Anyway, it's a 3-hour movie. Okay, it's also very, at times, kind of poetic and takes a lot of license, and it's not easy to follow. But I think it's a masterpiece.
Yeah, you loved it.
Yeah,
I really,
love it.
I wish I'd watched it again. I definitely will, maybe this weekend. But
it was the most.
Yeah.
I would say that out of this one was the best of Demme, like in a way that I hadn't seen him before. Even because this one is his gothic melodrama, right?
Yeah.
It's in that vein. It's very gothic, and it's got a kind of gothic horror quality to it. And I think because it was mixed with a slavery narrative, people's schemas are very thin and narrow, and they don't know how to understand that kind of take within that kind of context, right?
Well, it sounds very ahead of its time because, I mean, in the last 15, 20 years, I think there's been a lot of genre adaptations of, stories around racism, stories around, the horrors of what's the plight of the indigenous peoples, of African Americans.
For sure.
There's been so much of that lately, not so much of that back in the 90s.
No.
Really.
I mean,
yeah, there was Candyman and stuff, but, I mean, it wasn't that
no,
prevalent.
And the thing is, like, whenever you did have a slavery narrative, it was Roots, or it was, I mean, Roots was good, but, it was what it was, right?
Yeah. Or The Color Purple, which also
or The
had
Color
Oprah
Purple.
and Danny Glover, I think.
Exactly. And that one does not hold up. It's terrible.
Right.
But no, this one is great. This one, because I think Demme also loved the material, and you really see something about Demme. Like, his movies are always visually great. I love them. They always look good. But he doesn't have a distinctive style. He did in his earlier days, I think, when he was doing screwball-y things, because he was kind of lifting from Preston Sturges and all that, whatever, right? There seemed to be a kind of visual style. Later, when he goes to Hollywood and gets those bigger movies, I think his style becomes a little flattened, right?
Yeah.
But
like Married to the Mob and Something Wild are very colorful. There's a lot of bursts of color.
Yeah, same with
all throughout,
and silliness, and kind of like a kind of slapsticky kind of.
Silence of the Lambs is very monochrome.
It's very monochrome, very serious, and very, very one note almost in some ways, right? So he changes that way, and then with I think he kind of, I would always say, like, where he tried to put everything together in Something Wild very successfully, I think. The thriller, the horror kind of thing, the tension with the screwball and the lighthearted and the
Ray Liotta's pretty scary in that movie.
Turns pretty fucking scary at the end. It's true. Yeah. And the way he goes, "Charlie, you killed me," at the end, it's great. But I think you're talking in this Hollywood period, he starts to now not divide things within the same film. He starts to do a bunch of different kinds of films.
Right.
So he does these big, massive Philadelphia movies and everything, and then he starts doing these, Neil Young documentaries as well, or the one about. I'm sorry, I'm talking way too long. You go ahead.
No. He does. I mean, certainly, Demme was a documentary filmmaker right from the 80s. I'm going to go back in time a little bit and talk a little bit about Stop Making Sense. Because,
that would be your favorite.
Well, it's hard to. I mean, how do you compare something like Silence of the Lambs to Stop Making Sense? But if I had to rank all of his films for me, as much as I love Silence and I love it like crazy, I think Stop Making Sense edges it out simply because it is so flawless. It is considered by many to be the greatest concert film of all time. I 100% agree. And you talked a little bit, Azed, about how Demme uses close-ups, And what he does with Stop Making Sense. I mean, this is what happens when you have an incredible band and an incredible filmmaker behind the camera.
Yeah.
And sure, there's lots of good music docs and concert docs out there, but the ones that are made lately, there's no filmmaking behind them, you know? I mean, you know, the Taylor Swift movie is just a roving digital camera capturing everything that's happening. Big deal. What Demme does in Stop Making Sense, and the film is just as much directed by David Byrne as it is by Jonathan Demme, is his camera placement is always there to capture the exact essence of every song. So, you know, Psycho Killer, it's just him and a boombox and a guitar. And then when he does Life During Wartime, he's expanding it out where we see all of these characters and, you know, and Byrne is doing this crazy dance right in the middle of the frame, right behind the microphone stand. And you never see the audience. And that's really one of the greatest things that he does, is that we as the viewer are almost always in the audience.
Yeah.
There's a lot of close-ups, and there's a lot of isolation of each musician.
Yeah.
We see, you know, Chris France. We see Tina Weymouth. We see all the backup singers.
So Talking
and
Heads.
And then finally at the end of the film, in the last couple of songs, like Cross-Eyed and Painless, I think, we start opening up, and he starts doing shots of the audience.
Right.
And the sense of joy and happiness and energy that comes out of this performance, I've never seen in any other concert film in my life.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, 100% agree that this is like, this movie is actually like better than an antidepressant, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, you know, I remember sitting one time watching it on TV alone. Do you understand me? I was alone. And I got up and danced.
Yeah.
By myself.
Yeah,
because it's impossible not to feel a kind of visceral response.
Yeah.
You know, because on top of it being amazing music, like just some of the best music in the last 50 years.
Yeah.
On top of that, the show is so meticulously designed and orchestrated.
Yeah.
And you're right. Demme there's something, I don't know, there's something about Demme that is hard to place in terms of how does he get that effect. That's why I kind of thought of Ozu a little bit. I'm not saying his movies are similar to Ozu. They're not.
But they share the humanism.
But they
share
the humanism
close-ups.
because he's interested in people, right?
Yeah.
And he's interested in this dynamic, like I said, of the community. And that's what you get with the Talking Heads. You have David Byrne, he's the star, but he's not treated like the star in the movie, right? Everybody's kind of given, you know, you remember the backup singers. You remember Tina Weymouth. You remember Chris
they feel
Franz.
like a band. They feel like a...
Yeah, and you kind of spend time with all of them, like you said.
Yeah.
He's very democratic that way, right?
Right,
and
back to that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But democratic in, like, you know, in the old-fashioned liberal way, right? Like, I mean, in a humanist way. And, you know, somebody was asking me this the other day about, like, you know, what does it take to be a good filmmaker or whatever. We were, you know, talking about, like, aesthetics, whatever, you know. But it's humanism, right? If you have nothing to say, right, then your movie could be fine. It could be good, right? Yeah. Could be enjoyable. But Demme's movies, like just for an example, I saw Beloved when it first came out around that time. I still thought about a particular couple of scenes from that movie, even though I didn't know if I loved it, for 20 years. He has indelibly marked me in a lot of different films he's done. There are certain scenes, the way he does them, I don't know how to put it into words exactly, but it's because he focuses on the thing next to the thing that you're supposed to be.
Exactly. That's a really good way of putting it, because you can't put your finger on what it is. You know, you can put your finger on people like John Ford. You can put your finger on Spielberg. You can put your finger on Scorsese. Yeah. Demme never stops being masterful, and you're never quite sure how.
No. He reminds me a little bit of Howard Hawks that way, because, you know, Howard Hawks did all the different genres too, right?
Yeah, and you brought up Preston Sturges, which I think is very good.
He's definitely he's got the old classics, auteurs in him. Yeah. You can see that in the kind of references he makes.
I just rewatched Sullivan's Travels on Turner Classic Movies.
Yeah, Tina was watching that when I came home. I was out that night, but
so
which is I
Well,
would say,
I mean-
is the precursor to Something Wild,
Very much.
because it has a very dark ending.
Yeah.
Sullivan's Trials, not the very ending, but when he's in prison, right?
Yeah.
Because once he's actually in prison, it's like it's not funny anymore,
No.
right?
No.
It gets kind of like yikes, and I think that that's also what Punch Drunk Love was trying to do, right? I don't think it did it well.
I don't think so.
But you can see that this kind of genre mixing is very big with Demme, right?
Yeah.
But that his focus is very much on the characters. He's one of the best actor directors I think who ever lived.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also one of those directors, I have to say, there are 4 or 5 of his movies I love in a way that like I could watch them anytime, right? Usually that's the earlier ones, but that's just because of my own preference.
Yeah, I mean, as we get later, so I was starting to talk about Demme's documentary work, and I think you recently watched The Agronomist.
I didn't finish it, but yes, I watched a lot of it. It's really good. It's very raw though.
The humanism of Demme really comes out in all of his docs.
Yes.
We distributed 2 Demme films. Man from Plains was the documentary that he made about Jimmy Carter when Jimmy Carter was on his book tour for his book about Palestine.
Right.
Good film, nothing outstanding, but it's again going back to Jimmy Carter is a American president who probably did more good for the world. He was
one of the most humanistic.
Well, he probably did more good for the world after his presidency than he did during his presidency, which was pretty crappy.
He was Habitats for Humanity.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Building houses up until his 80s or 90s.
Yeah, totally. It's incredible. And then a film of his that I really admire called Rachel Getting Married, which has a standout performance from Anne Hathaway.
So this is a movie that I like a little bit less than you.
Yeah.
I find this is the one criticism, and then I'm going to hand it over to you for this, but the one criticism I would make about Jonathan Demme is his earnestness can sometimes be a little bit cringe. I find that is the one thing it doesn't happen often, but I find that happened to me with Rachel Getting Married, where some of the family scenes, maybe they were just too raw or something for me, but there just seemed to be kind of like an over. It's hard with an ensemble cast and a family drama like that to get it to feel very authentic. Mm-hmm. This one I think was close, but I think there are times I kind of felt it didn't quite work.
Yeah, I felt it was pretty authentic. I haven't seen the film in a very long time. I think I only saw it before we opened it, and to me, he's going for this sort of almost bucolic, utopian kind of family dynamic where you've got everybody is extremely diverse. LGBT, straight, white, black. There's all these people that are part of this family.
Well,
are all
Rachel Getting Married, she's marrying a black guy, right?
Exactly. And I think the concept of this, dark figure Anne Hathaway coming back in out of rehab, she had inadvertently, accidentally killed her younger brother many years ago. She's got all these substance abuse problems. And I think it's an example of how Demme is trying to show how love and humanity and compassion and empathy bring out the best in everybody. And, it may be earnest, but I think it belongs there, and I think it earns it. To me, I thought it was a very beautiful film.
Yeah. I haven't seen it for a long time either, so I'd have to watch it again. But I remember feeling a little bit like, just feeling like it didn't quite hit what it was going for. But, I think it was a perfectly good movie.
It shares a similar kind of themes to his final feature film.
Which nobody's heard of.
Ricky and the Flash.
Yeah, I had never heard of it, and I came.
I remember when it came out. Yeah, and it was, again,
considering it has Meryl Streep in it, you would think it would be better known. Yeah,
and I did better, but and similarly, it's about this outsider figure, Meryl Streep, who's this failed rock star, playing in bars. She abandoned her children and left her rich husband Kevin Kline, so she could try to be a rock star, and then comes back because her son is getting married. and then that whole family dynamic changes. It's not quite as successful as Rachel, I don't think.
No, I mean it's a very it's like a bookend with that movie, though. It's got a very similar sort of idea.
Yeah.
But well, I like that movie, Ricky and the Flash.
I
thought it was fine. Like, you know, it was sort of like lesser, like a little bit, like just not that important.
It actually comes more alive in the performances, in the musical performances, when Meryl Streep and her band, because she's got real musicians. She's got Bernie Worrell as the keyboardist, who's also in Stop Making Sense.
He's like a famous studio musician.
Yeah, and Rick Springfield is the lead guitarist, boyfriend.
He looks like he's had some bad work done, though.
Yeah, but he's really good. He holds his own with Meryl Streep.
Well, what's really interesting is the connection, like we were saying, like there are these tropes now we've kind of, you know, mapped out about Demme, you know, like these kind of things, the close up and the kind of the equal rights for all characters involved. And in this last movie of his, which is it's very similar to a lot of his other movies, because the Meryl Streep character, like you called her a failed rock star. Yeah. And it's true. But nonetheless, she's still going for it, right?
She is.
And I think that reminds me a lot of Melvin, right?
Very much.
Yeah.
Very much.
It's like, okay, this bad shit happens. He didn't get the money in the end, whatever. But it's like, okay.
Yeah.
You know,
she doesn't change in the film. And but everyone around her does. So her presence.
They start to come around to her more.
They come around to her. So I really like the ending where she plays at her son's wedding and everybody finally. And it's a bit cheese, but I like it.
Well,
I like
those kind of things he's going for. They're difficult not to be cynical about, I guess. Yeah. But ultimately, I think he's got this through line. You know, whether it's Melvin or Meryl Streep's character, or it's Buffalo Bill. Or, you know, Tom Hanks, you know, these are all people who they don't need to change. It's the society around them that can't deal with them. I think that's his biggest point, even in Beloved.
I think you're totally right.
The point is, like,
they're the hearts of the films.
Yeah, you're asking these people to change and conform to what you want, right? These are society's rules, but it's society's failure that you don't know how to make room for all people. Yeah. That's, I think, what he's really kind of getting at.
You're right. Yeah. I think Demme does want to make room for everybody.
He does, and that's what makes his films. That's what gives it that shine of that extra beautiful quality that you can really get. You know, you can get really moved by his films. You can get like I enjoy his movies in a way that I don't often enjoy movies, right? Mm-hmm. Because it does have that comment. The only other film like that I think is very close to a Jonathan Demme style, and maybe he was influenced by him, I don't know, is Albert Brooks' Lost in America, where every character is memorable, right? Like every
that was made in
character.
84, so probably not that influenced.
Maybe. I don't know. You never know what's influencing what, man. You don't know, right? These guys are like...
I think Albert Brooks was his own thing.
He was, but boy, that you know, we have to talk about that being my all-time favorite comedy.
We should do a whole episode about Lost in America.
I love Lost in America.
You know, my uncle is doing Lost in America right now.
Really?
Yeah, he retired, and him and his wife.
In Winnebago?
Exactly, 100%.
Does this Winnebago have a good Browning element? I love. Yeah, let's do a whole episode on. We can either do on Albert Brooks or we can do it just on Lost in America. Okay. Because I can talk about that. I know that movie off by heart.
Well, listeners, please let us know. Comment on our socials. Let us know. Do we do an episode on Albert Brooks as a whole, or just on Lost in America? Because I could see Albert Brooks as a whole. There's a lot of great stuff he does.
I think he made like 3 or 4 amazing movies for sure.
Yeah.
And we could talk about Albert Brooks for sure, but I mean, Lost in America is my favorite comedy. I think. Yeah. So, you're talking about Azed, like Azed and Tom's favorite comedy. So you should want to come and listen.
Absolutely.
To that. Yeah. All right. We got anything else about?
No, I think you nailed it.
There's so many movies in his oeuvre. It's hard to kind of go through because there's like some smaller films.
Yeah, we missed a whole bunch.
Whole bunch. Yeah. But we got to the general kind of concept of Jonathan Demme.
And Azed and I see a lot of movies, and we're very critical, and we hate almost everything we see. But we love almost everything that Jonathan Demme
Yeah,
does.
he's great.
Yeah.
And yeah, if I could make a plea to people, it would be try to watch Beloved. I think it's on Disney, on the Disney Channel. It's a hard watch, but it's actually, I didn't find it boring at all. And it's 3 hours, and it's a tough one. It's tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'd love to hear what other people might think about Beloved, because it did cause a lot of controversy at the time, and it was a total flop, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So definitely in need of re-examination.
Yes, I say it's his masterpiece.
Wow. There you go. Challenge accepted.
I will fight you.
And with that, we will see you out there in the dark.
Oh, sorry, man. I ruined that take.
It's not Beloved anymore.
You said you liked the smell of my farts before.